So if we look at the beginning, the case study or opening of Chapter 16, which is about pollution and waste, particularly solid waste, make sure you read this opening statement or opening case. And so it talks about which is better, paper or plastic. So you'd be really surprised, I think, at what you find to be more harmful. They kind of have pros and cons, and it's kind of a tough decision between, I think, between which would be better. Although initially, reading it, I would think paper would be better. But make sure that you read through this and understand kind of the pros and cons of using both and where they're coming from with that. All right, so moving over to actually M51, only humans generate waste. So I want you to study this figure. So looking at it, raw materials are going in, energy, inputs. These arrows are not proportional. And then you've got reusing, recycling, kind of keeping this going so that you're minimizing the inputs and you're still receiving outputs. So if we just have a linear system where we don't recycle, it's not going to work because we have a finite amount of resources. So eventually we'll run out. So you definitely have to reduce what you use, and then reuse what you use as well. And then you get the outputs. So just study what that means, read the description, understand it. So moving on to page 576. The video that I showed you for M51, or that you'll watch for the M51 notes, that is a video that talks about planned versus perceived obsolescence. So that has to do with this throwaway society idea. So think about the last time that you had a product and it wasn't working right. And most of the time, especially electronics, like printers and things like that, it's cheaper to throw it away than it is to get a new one. If you go to try to get it fixed, it often costs much more for them just to look at it than it does to actually just buy a new printer. So what do you do with the old one? Well, nobody wants it because it's broken, so you throw it away. And so that's kind of our dilemma here, is that we've got all these products that are only lasting a year or two, and then they're either obsolete or they don't last, they die. So that's kind of what this planned obsolescence is. So either a product won't last longer than a year or two, or it's going to it'll just be cheaper to buy something new. So that's planned obsolescence. And then just think about how that contributes to our throwaway society. So what exactly does that mean? How do companies do that? If you think of some other examples, Maytag washers. So they're known for lasting forever. Well, Maytag had some trouble, and as a business went under. And think about, well, okay, if nothing's breaking and people all buy a Maytag washer, then what happens when everybody has a Maytag washer? Then you no longer have any sales. And so that doesn't work for a company as a company perspective. So you have to build things that are going to last but not last forever. So that's kind of what planned obsolescence is. So as a business model, you want people to continue to purchase your product. So that's kind of where that's at. And then over here, where does the U.S. MSW, so that's municipal solid waste, where does that come from? So particularly where residential, industrial, is what I'm talking about there. And then right here, what three things affect the amount of municipal solid waste generated by an individual? So there's three things in particular that cause us to generate waste. So what are those three things? It could be as a society or individual. And then moving over to the other side, page 577, if we look at this side, why is the amount of MSW rising in developing countries? So why are they developing more waste? So generally they have very little waste, but in recent years there has been an increase in their amount of waste. So why is that? And then this section over here on the side talks about the waste stream. So what is that? And what determines how fast something enters the waste stream? So think about some products you use. You may use them several times before you throw them away. Some of them are just single use. Some things are maybe a year. or two, and then you get rid of them. So what determines that? What determines how fast something enters that waste stream, which is going into either recycling or garbage? And then on this page it shows these figures. It shows basically all of the waste, kind of where it's coming from, percentage-wise. And then it shows how much is recovered. So what materials, so just looking this over, what materials comprise this amount of waste? So if we look at it, paper is the majority of the waste. And this could be packaging. It's not just paper like we write on. But it could be packaging, wrap, tissue, toilet paper. It's a variety of things, cardboard, that all falls kind of under this paper category. And then, so kind of just look that over and be familiar with it. If it was asked on a test, like the AP test, you'd have an idea. You're not going to be able, or you're not going to have to spit out percentages, but you need to kind of have an idea of where our waste, like the general idea of where our waste is coming from. And then even after recovery, so if we look at these two figures at the bottom, it's showing how much is recovered and then how much is actually discarded after it's recovered, meaning recycled, picked out of the trash, however it gets out of there. So where does most of this end up? So after we pull out what we want to reuse or what we can compost or whatever we're doing with it, where does the rest of it go? So where does this in particular go? And then when categorized by source, so where is the particular waste coming from, which category makes up the biggest portion of municipal solid waste? So which category as far as like packaging, is it yard waste? Is it building materials? What compromises that, or what makes up the biggest portion of that solid waste? And then what is e-waste? So e-waste, we talked about, as far as it's electronics. So it could be anything that plugs in the wall. It's not just a phone, but it could be a hairdryer, curling iron, toaster, refrigerator. So any of that is e-waste. So why is it really bad? So looking at it, compared to other waste, maybe it's proportional, maybe it's smaller, but why is it really bad compared to maybe, let's say, paper waste? And it's not just the space it takes up, but think about all the things that go into manufacturing something that is electronic. What exactly is in there? There's precious metals in there, there's toxic metals, there's all kinds of things. And after you read the article that's on Google Classroom, you'll have a really good idea of why it's bad. And that's it for M51.